Due Process, for the second consecutive year, recipient of Mid-Atlantic Emmy Awards for Outstanding Talk Show Series and Outstanding Public Affairs Series.
Can you tell the difference between John Travolta and Jan Schlickman? Both are connected to a civil action, a book, a movie, an experience shared by folks around the country and in New Jersey. A special intimate conversation with the civil action's Jan Schlickman, whose dramatic case is now being seen by millions on movie screens nationwide. Up next on Due Process.
Major funding for Due Process is made possible by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law. Additional funding is provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual, publishers of print and electronic information for and about the legal community, including the legislative manual.
As the media focuses more intently on the justice system, some lawyers inevitably attain fame or infamy. In both categories, criminal lawyers tend to dominate, but some well-known advocates gain notoriety from civil action. A best-selling book and a motion picture called A Civil Action catapulted attorney Jan Schlickman to fame for his representation of 8 families in Massachusetts in a long and complex environmental case. Jan is with us today, but first, a compelling story right here in New Jersey about the tremendous cost associated with environmental harm and environmental litigation. Here's a special Due Process report focusing on a seemingly simple discovery by some New Jersey artisans that spawned a pretty emotional lawsuit. New Jersey is the Garden State, but some might call it the toxic state. When the first national listing came out in 1983, New Jersey had more Superfund sites than any other state, 85 in all. While some of these have been remediated, more have been added. The list now stands at 107. One of the more recent additions is located in the heart of Hoboken.
Word was spreading through the art community. We formed a group, the Grand Street Artists Partnership.
The building the artists wanted to buy cost $1.5 million. The former factory would house their families, studios, and dreams.
And we said, let's do it right.
For this group of urban homesteaders, doing it right meant hiring a law firm to represent their interests and an environmental company, Rogers Environmental Management, to see if the building could be safely converted to residential use.
So this was an educational process in the specific laws and processes of going from industrial to residential. That's why we hired experts, because none of us did that for a living.
The state of New Jersey had this law called ECRA, which I believe is the Environmental Cleanup and Reclamation Act. And it was very important to me the state of New Jersey would be checking this out and that the DEP would sign off on the property only if it met stringent conditions, that it would be safe.
The building came up with a clean bill of health, and the artists closed on the deal in August 1993. Then they began the arduous task of conversion.
We had to bring the new water lines, the electric lines, and they put the heating system in. Then each partner got an empty shell, and then I started work on my unit, and it took about a year to actually do the interior of the unit.
Thousands of hours of sweat equity were poured into the building. The artists extended themselves physically and financially. The results were stunning, custom-designed condominiums. There are 16 units in the building. Renovation proceeded smoothly until the floor in the last condo was pulled up. The artists found bright pools of a silvery metal.
We weren't sure what it was, so we brought in an environmental consultant to look at it, and he believed it to be mercury, and at first suggested it may be just a small random occurrence from a broken thermometer or a manometer.
More floor was pulled up. More environmental consultants were brought in. More mercury was found. The artists called the Hudson County Health Department and the DEP.
They claimed that they were no longer associated or responsible for the interiors of buildings. and that it would be up to us to address it.
Some of the artists decided to get tested for mercury. The health department followed up with the rest of the residents and found elevated levels in everyone. But it wasn't until shortly before Christmas 1995 that the hysteria really began.
I planned for evacuation.
It's just tragic.
Who's going to help us with the money for cleaning up?
A really loud knock at the door we heard. We went to the door, and there were a number of police officials and the health official from Hoboken, and they just told us that we were living in a building that was contaminated with mercury, and it was at levels that were unsafe for human habitation.
You were only allowed the clothes on your back, and you were allowed to go. Later, you could come back and remove some of your clothing in plastic bags after they were screened to be safe, and then your furniture months later.
The artists were out, but the finger-pointing had just begun. Who was responsible? How had the contamination gotten by all the environmental watchdogs? And who was going to pay? Robert Stein is representing the Grand Street artists.
The thing that makes this case particularly unique, I think, is the number of parties that are involved in the case, both on the plaintiff side and the defendant side, and also the human factor, the personal stories that have been told and that will be told.
The timeline on this case goes back almost 90 years to 1910, when the General Electric Company began manufacturing mercury vapor lamps there. In 1948, its subsidiary, Cooper Hewitt, bought the building and continued making the lamps. In 1955, Cooper Hewitt sold the building to John Pascal and the Quality Tool and Die Company. Quality leased back part of the building, though, and Cooper Hewitt continued using mercury through 1964. In 1979, John Pascal sold the building to his son David. John Semple represents John Pascal.
It's simply a tragedy what's happened to Mr. Pascal, because he's 90 years old, because his involvement in the case is as a prior property owner, somebody who's simply in the chain of title here, that he didn't put the mercury there. He didn't sell the property to the plaintiffs. He is not responsible for the conversion of the property into residential units, but yet he's stuck in this litigation.
In 1989, David hired Jenny Engineering Corporation to prepare a state-mandated Environmental Cleanup Responsibility Act ECRA report so that Quality Tool and Die could formally cease operations. No mention was made of mercury or intent to sell the building, and based on this report, the DEP granted approval.
That filing included what is commonly referred to as a negative declaration that was signed by David Pascal, which was in effect a statement under oath that there were no hazardous substances or conditions that were associated with this particular property.
While David claims no knowledge of mercury, there's no shortage of other defendants.
General Electric Company, the Cooper Hewitt Electric Company, the Chase and Lehner law firm, which was the law firm that represented the Grand Street Artist Partnership.
Our own attorney who closed on this place never did a title search to tell us that General Electric Mercury Vapor Lamps owned this place.
Rogers Environmental Management is a defendant, Jenny Environmental. NPAC, which was one of the environmental companies that the Grand Street Artist Partnership hired in 1995, after mercury had been discovered at the building, an environmental company called Environmental Waste Management.
Claims are for both property damages and personal injury, including emotional distress. The EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers have relocated the residents, but they haven't been able to remove the emotional residue.
I was pregnant, so of course when I had Ezra, we had lived in the building for almost a year, and I'm very concerned about his health, basically, and I have to be concerned about it probably for the rest of his life.
It's been a nightmare. It's been so devastating. I can't even begin to describe to you what I've been through. I mean, we're talking over 5 years of my life has been tied up in this.
If there's good to be found in this story, it is perhaps in the legislative arena. Assemblyman John Rooney, chairman of the Solid and Hazardous Waste Committee, is sponsoring 3 bills as a result.
They should have never had this incident. They both failed at every level of government, the local level, the county level, the state level. The federal level finally stepped in and did something.
The bills include low interest rates for new mortgages, continued health monitoring by the state, and state licensing of environmental companies.
We want to license these people that do these inspections and make sure that they're insured, at least $1 million worth of insurance per incident.
The case will be heard in Newark under U.S. District Judge Harold Ackerman. Meanwhile, the Environmental Protection Agency says the building is so contaminated with mercury that they have scheduled to raise it sometime next year. The human factor. It sometimes gets lost in discussions about trial strategy or money damages. Nonetheless, in the last analysis, it's the struggle of human beings to overcome adversity that's the most important part of the legal process. We saw it in Hoboken, and now we'll talk to a lawyer whose life was transformed by the drama underlying the book and movie A Civil Action. We'll examine the life of a celebrity, the case that changed his life and that of his clients. Jan Schlickman joins us now from Boston. Welcome, Jan.
Thank you.
Jan, let me start by asking you the most important legal question in all of this. What's it like to have your life depicted on the silver screen?
Well, it certainly is a unique experience, that's for sure. You know, it was a very emotional and trying time and a very important time in my life, and then to have it recreated and to be able to re-experience it was, well, like a very interesting therapy.
Well, therapy, well, that means that you're a vastly improved human being now as a result of it.
Well, I think that the experience has it took me a long time to understand. It really taught me a lot. I really learned a tremendous amount, and it sustains me now and has helped me become a better person and therefore a better person. I have a better understanding of the world.
Let me ask you one other important legal question. When you were a kid sitting around, or maybe when you were in college and speculating about being an important person whose life would be in the movies, would you have picked John Travolta as the guy to play you?
No, well, listen, better than Danny DeVito or Joe Pesci, you know.
That's true. Let me ask you this. You've talked about lessons learned. One of the things that happened, at least in the movie, was there was a depiction of a lawyer who started out as kind of the stereotypical personal injury lawyer, kind of ruthless and interested in money, and has an epiphany in which he sort of changes into somebody with higher values. Is that sort of a Hollywood gloss, or was that really you?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to the story in the sense that my character certainly went through an evolution. I think that the case, the experience really tested everyone, including myself, and it forced you to reveal yourself, but through choice making, you know, to yourself and to others, and I was revealed. But I believe that the film does not do as good a job as the book does in showing the multi-dimensional aspects of my character and other people, and a lot of the humanity that was involved in, you know, in this enterprise. But I think the film is very, very good, and I think it certainly gets people to see the journey that we went on.
Well, you say you've been transformed in a sense, you've learned something. Is there one single thing that you've learned more than any other from this entire episode?
Well, I think I learned ultimately the importance of truth itself for life itself, and each of our responsibilities to ourselves, to our families, to our community, to have a fidelity to the truth, because we have to be rooted in this earth, we have to be rooted in reality, because we have to understand the past if we're going to have a future, because this past is a toxic legacy to this past based on, you know, the human pathology that afflicts all of us, and we have to understand that or we're not going to have a future.
Jen, do you realize that when a trial lawyer says he's come to a greater understanding of truth, that there are people snickering in the background?
Oh, I know it well, absolutely. Sure, you know, lawyers talking about the truth, you know, yuck, yuck. And,
well, what about this experience gave you a new window on truth? What was it about the drama in Woburn and the subsequent interest of millions of people in that drama that gave you a different window on truth?
Well, what happened is the families came to me, you know, in my comfortable world. I had a career, it was on an arc, I was collecting all the things that make life worth living, or so I thought, and the families came in and then they told me, shared with me their story, and I got caught up in it eventually, and then I took on their cause, and by doing so, I had to necessarily leave this comfortable world and was able to look back on it and realize that this comfortable world, like the metaphor in the movie, has water that we're all drinking, and it's poisoned. And unless we understand that poison, we're never going to be able to remove that poison so we can have a future.
I suspect that folks who are exposed to you only through the movie, or exposed to your story only through the movie, would be uncertain as to what your relationship is now with the families who were your clients. And obviously they underwent a great deal of pain, and we all know the movie does try to touch on the question of how you can't use money as a substitute for the loss of a child, but also leaves up in the air how they've evolved, how they've lived with that, and what your relation to them is now.
Well, we have a very wonderful relationship, a close relationship. Donna Robbins just called me, actually, emailed me, actually, just yesterday about our plans to have a dinner with the families this Saturday coming up. We do this on a fairly regular basis. We really very close. This experience brought us together. My former partners, Kevin and Bill, and former members of my staff, we're all very, very close from this experience, and our bonds have actually become greater and stronger because of it. So it was really a blessing, you know, this experience we went through. It brought us closer, it tested us and tried us, but I think that it revealed some good stuff in all of us.
Well, it's certainly fair to say that a trial lawyer undertakes the risk that his life will be made transparent when he begins to try cases, but that's not so for families who didn't choose to be in the path of pollution. How have the families reacted to the movie? Do they like it? Do they not like it? Are they comfortable with that kind of portrayal?
Well, you know, the families made a commitment right at the beginning, and they had a realization that they needed to share their story with the rest of the world. They were compelled to do it because they believed at bedrock that unless they shared it, people wouldn't learn, and had others shared before them, then they perhaps would have been spared. So they felt a responsibility to share so that others would be spared their fate. And so Donna Robbins was asked just recently, you know, were you disappointed in the verdict? And she said, no, no, the book and the movie, that's the verdict that we wanted, and we got it. And it's a verdict we can share, a victory we can share with the rest of the world.
You're involved in a case here in New Jersey in Toms River, and I understand that your involvement in that case came about because of people who had read the book or seen the movie. Is that true?
Yes. Linda Gillick, one of the mothers, and others had read the book and had saw many parallels between the experience in Toms River and Woburn, you know, wells, city wells that are contaminated with the same kinds of chemicals, and two large companies implicated, and a lot of children with cancer, and a lot of questions and few answers. And so she was hoping I could come down and share what I learned, and so I did. And in that sharing process, we made a commitment to work together to see if we couldn't get some answers to questions by joining with others to help us do that.
We share your view about truth, so I should disclose that I've represented a couple of the corporate executives in the criminal phase with respect to that Toms River plant. But one of the things that comes up with Toms River in the Hoboken story that our viewers showed, and also the Woburn story that's depicted in the book and the movie, is that what may seem to be a simple question, was there a contaminant? Did it harm people, and should they be compensated, can become very complex very quickly. And that's maybe more so true in environmental litigation, especially since it often affects ordinary folks, than almost any other area of the law.
Well, I think that's very, very true. You know, I visit communities all over this country, and there isn't a community anywhere in this country, I don't think anywhere in this world, that doesn't experience the toxic legacy of past human activity. And what I try and get communities to understand is that they are responding to a symptom of an underlying pathology that afflicts all of us. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Like in all therapy, we have to be honest with ourselves and then encourage honesty in others if we're going to understand how we got to this dangerous place, if we're ever going to, by understanding it, ever get to a healthier and a safer place. And it's painful. These cases really are about us, about all aspects of us and who we are and what we want and how we look at the world, how we look at the earth, how we look at each other. And they challenge us and they force us to be honest about some of the pathology in that choice making so that we can begin to get healthy together, because that's what it's all about, getting healthy.
Jen, one of the problems, however, is it's not just about us living now, but about our parents and grandparents. The report we showed from Hoboken involved activities that had taken place half a century ago. The story in Woburn involved past practices of grace, and the Toms River story involves activities that have been going on for decades. So to that extent, of course, it's awfully expensive. How does the ordinary person who gets involved in this kind of a matter make the judgment about whether to go forth, given the tremendous cost?
Because you see, it is, our past is us, and that's what I try and get communities to understand. We are our past. We're a product of that past. All those choices that were made by us and by others, and those before us, we are now living with that toxic legacy. We have to understand those choices, begin to figure out which were the bad ones, which were the good ones, if we're going to begin to make, because every day we're faced with new choices. What are we going to do today, and what are we going to do tomorrow? Now, one of the things you have to realize is, in that analysis, is you didn't get there on your own. No, there was a whole bunch of other folks who helped get you to that place, and you're not going to be able to get out of that place on your own. No, no. So you have to start to work with others and share your experience with others and have them share it with you so that together we can understand this past and then together figure out where we go from here. We all bear a responsibility to understand if we're to go. And we're all stuck together by the problem sticks us all together, and together we get out of here. And if we don't, then together we'll all die. And it's as simple as that.
But sometimes it comes down to a tough question of who should pay. I got to tell you, when I read the book the first time, I recall I actually picked it up one evening and didn't go to sleep that night. And one of the things I could identify with as a trial lawyer was actually being on the point of losing everything you had because you had to financially commit to pay for a case, not knowing how it would come out at the other end. At that point, it's actually the lawyer who pays. But along the way, the question of who pays and how is very complicated. Do you have a sense that our society is moving towards a rational way of deciding who pays?
Well, see, this was I think one of the important revelations that I had is, you see, I thought that when the clients came to me, the families came to me, they had a problem, and my job was to make a case out of it. And of course, when I do that, then I take over the problem and I essentially treat it as my own. And what I've realized is you can't do it on your own. You can't do it alone. The families can't, you can't, and then together you can't. And when you start thinking about lawsuits and legal cases, you're beginning to look at the world in a very distorted way. And when you start going down that road of litigation and thinking that is your only solution, you're going to get lost, as we did and like almost everybody else does, because the courtroom, which is based on conflict, is not a good place to resolve these things, because there's too many people involved, there are too many questions, and we need to work together, and we need to encourage the kind of behavior that gets us to be open and honest with each other. Like that example in Hoboken. Think about all those people with all those differing interests, and all of them filing their separate lawsuits, all going off in different tracks. Can you imagine, suppose we got all of those people at one time in one place in one room, and we got them to talk openly and honestly to each other about the past and how they got to this place. One can imagine that perhaps in that process they just might begin to figure out where they could go from there that might just offer them a little more hope of resolving it than the lawsuit does. Well, how can we encourage people to do that? And that, I think, is a social and political obligation that we all have.
I was just going to say, it seems to me like you're asking for a larger conversation. There is, of course, a growing trend in the law to look at mediation and other alternative dispute resolution, but you're talking about the Congress and state legislatures, leaders of the bar, judges, not groups that are necessarily known for their ability to come together and show the wisdom of Solomon. Are you optimistic that that's likely to lead to a different kind of approach to these problems?
I am. You know, I go around the country, have been going around the country and speaking to all sorts of groups. I just was at a group of legislators in the state of Washington and judges and lawyers who are concerned with developing alternatives to conflict so that parties can get together on environmental issues and on other issues. I've talked to many different groups all over this country, professional groups, business groups, corporate executives, to environmental groups, to college students and high school students. All of them are very receptive and understand the need for us to solve these problems because they threaten our existence. We cannot afford the time. And conflict wastes time and people's lives and money. And we can't afford that waste. Our resources are limited. We have no choice. So once you realize that, then you start doing what you have to do.
Of course, to some, this is going to sound like apostasy coming from a trial lawyer, but let me ask you this, whether the book and the movie have given you a platform or a way to reach out to people and take this message beyond your own community where you live.
Absolutely. And you know, when people start, you know, I can't go from the outside. Sometimes communities ask me, they say, you know, can you solve this problem? I say, no, but I can certainly help, and there are plenty of others who can help, but you have to make the decision yourself. Do you want to solve it? And the only way you can solve it is by understanding the past. Are you willing to make the commitment to work with others, even those who you think oppose you and who you don't want to be in the same room with because you think they've abused you? Are you willing to get them into a room, encourage them to come into a room, and be open and honest to begin that process? If you are, I can work with you and we can do things. And every time we've done it, it has worked. Every time we've brought parties together, community, government, and corporate groups have come together to solve real-world, real-life problems. We're trying to do it in Tom's River.
I was just going to say, is that an approach that's going to be used, or are you going to try to use in Tom's River?
Yes, and I believe it is working in Tom's River and in other places as well. We've had many success stories with it. It offers us the greatest opportunity, I think, to get to that place. Now, it's not a guarantee. You know, sometimes partnerships dissolve and people just can't see beyond their own self-interest. But when you, at least if you start the process that way, there's a chance that people will see their common self-interest in solving the problem.
Now, Jan, my father's always telling me things like, you know, pain that doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and that we usually grow through adversity. But it sounds as though that's the story that's happened to you, that being bankrupt, having to re-examine your values, losing the things that you had has forced you to rethink your life and your craft.
Oh, no, definitely it has. You know, this experience did it. My former partner and very good friend Kevin described it as a black hole. And like a black hole, it brought you into its gravitational pull. And once there, you were caught. And then you went to another side of the universe. And the other side of the universe allowed you to look back from where you came and realize, you know, like I say, the world, our comfortable world, there's a lot of danger there that is created by us. And we have to begin to understand that.
It wouldn't be fair if I didn't ask you this. Any negative responses based on your portrayal in the book and the movie, either jealousy or people who just say, oh, he's no good, he's just getting the benefit of Hollywood? I mean, any of that happened at all?
Well, a lot of people have used a lot of different adjectives. You know, they look at my character from all sorts of different viewpoints. But I think that people really do like the story and do sense that there was an evolution of character. And so whatever they may think of who I was or what my motivations were, I think they, in the end, like the fact that a commitment was made and families made a commitment, lawyers made a commitment to really search for the truth and sensing it an importance for the rest of us by doing that.
I want to thank you for bringing that truth to us and also being willing to be transparent so we can all grow. Thank you very much, Jan. We wish you good luck. Hope you'll come back and join us again in the future.
I'd love to. Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Due Process, but join us next week when our docket will include another important look at law and social justice. Till then, for all of us here at Due Process, I'm Raymond Brown.
Major funding for Due Process was made possible by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law. Additional funding was provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual, publishers of print and electronic information for and about the legal community, including the legislative manual.
Yeah. The guy represented didn't do anything wrong. The guy represented didn't do anything wrong.
Okay, did it work out okay?
No, the guy.
Did it work out okay? Did you get what you wanted?
Oh.
My pleasure, thank you.
Well.